welcome to episode 218 of Cinematary. I'm your host, Zach Dennis, and I'm here with
Andrew Swafford,
Jessy Alva,
Jordan Collier,
Paige Taylor.
And in today's episode, we'll be talking about movies we saw this week in part one, specifically the lineup of the 2018 Knoxville Horror Film Festival. And in part two, we will be continuing our Horror by Women series with 2009's Jennifer's Body. But Andrew, Jordan, I am going to pass it over to you because you guys attended the Knox Horror Fest.
Yeah, Paige and Jessy are just going to see themselves out for a while and come back for part two once we start talking about Jennifer's Body. Jordan and I marathoned a bunch of movies between last Thursday and last Sunday. I think the plan here is to just kind of work through all of them as fast as we can. So these are going to be rapid fire takes, but there will be a long, detailed bit of festival coverage published on cinematary.com next Monday. So please keep an eye out for that. We'll go ahead and get into it. Our first movie Thursday night, All the Creatures Were Stirring by Rebecca and David Ian McHenry, their husband and wife directorial duo. This is their first feature. And this is an anthology horror Christmas film that I knew nothing about other than there's at least one section of it that stars Constance Wu from Crazy Rich Asians and The Feels, kind of up-and-coming star. Jordan, what did you think about this movie?
I think, like most anthology movies, it is kind of very hard to rate. I don't know if I share that opinion with you or not, but anthology movies usually have about one or two segments that are worth seeing ever, and then you're kind of held hostage by the runtime beyond that. Which is kind of true for this one as well. There is a standout segment, the one starring Constance Wu, about these aliens that show up every Christmas Eve to abduct this guy and spend Christmas with him, and it's very strange and very cool. And other than that, I didn't really vibe very hard with the, five other shorts. Yeah. But I did like the framing narrative, which is almost never the case.
Yeah, the frame narrative is that it's Christmas Eve. These two loners have got together for a quote-unquote date. They're not really dating, but they're just spending Christmas Eve together because they don't know anybody else. And they go to an experimental theater, and they're seeing this... they're seeing the shorts that we're watching being acted out through like interpretive dance and stuff like that. And so there will be these great edits where the short has ended and then you smash cut to people in like gray shirts acting it out on stage. And those are always funny moments for sure.
I think the best example of it is one of the shorts is about a rabid reindeer that chases a guy and in the end of it gores him to death, and then it cuts back to one of the stage actors kind of standing there just unfurling a red ribbon while a guy holding a lawn decoration of a reindeer like gently runs it into him.
And I leaned over and said, Suspiria 2018. I don't have a whole lot of experience with anthology films, to be quite honest. Even though I'm kind of a horror completionist in a lot of ways, these are just movies that I avoid. I don't think necessarily that I felt held hostage by the other shorts and I only enjoyed one or two of them. I kind of felt like all of them were somewhere in the middling range of amusing, pretty good, but like they're not really knocking it out of the park or doing anything spectacular for me. So I kind of felt like I was watching television while this was on, and I felt like kind of a weak opener to the fest.
It feels like a very weird opener, especially when last year opened with the 4K restoration of Suspiria.
Oh, yeah.
Which was wild.
So after that, I had to leave, and then because I had to teach early next morning, you got to stick around for a very strange premiere. No, it's not a premiere.
It's not a premiere.
But an old movie that's been rediscovered called Blood Lake. Tell us about it.
So Blood Lake was filmed in 1987, I think, but just now in 2018 is making the festival rounds, which I'm not sure why. It was filmed on video, so I called it lovingly the 480p remaster of the slasher classic Blood Lake.
No, you said the public access.
The public
slasher.
access. It really feels like a public access channel like thing that you're trapped in. But it's about these kids, these teens that spend a weekend at a lake house. One of the friends' parents owns a lake house. And there is the least intimidating man of all time there squatting and killing people. It's 90 minutes long, and nothing of the horror sort happens until like the hour mark. And up to that point, there's the opening credits, by the way, is like this 80s butt rock song that just sounds like it's looping. And the credits are taking way too long, and there's nothing happening except them driving down a road. And then it cuts to them just kind of hanging out, cracking open brews, meeting these two local kids. And then, I shit you not, there is like 8 uninterrupted minutes of water skiing with the same butt rock song from the credits. And then it stops for a second, and then there's 2 more minutes of water skiing. I don't know what the fixation with water skiing is. There's also a feature-length static shot image of a game of quarters that plays out in real time. Reminds me a lot of Twin Peaks: The Return's Drive to Odessa.
Don't drag Twin Peaks to Return into this.
But yeah, other than that, like, that when the slashing starts, everybody seems totally uninterested in the slashing, and it's so weird. I don't know why it is making the festival rounds. It is being distributed by the American Genre Film Archive, which is a company that kind of goes around and trying to find stuff like this and preserve it. I don't know what Blood Lake is a great example of, but it merits being collected.
It's made by some just like college friends. Right?
Yeah, it was made by a group of friends, and they didn't do anything else. I think the director has done sound in like these horror threequels. I'm pretty sure everything he's done has a 3 after it. But yeah, it's just such a strange choice. Oh, it is very funny because at the end, the killer kind of just walks out to the lake, and the lake is dried up, and the first credit that rolls is Dried Lake Special Effects by... The first credit is Dried Lake Special Effects by An Act of God. It's the credit.
Okay, I have to say, this is probably a movie that I will never watch on my own at home. But I regret that I was not able to watch it with the crowd of slightly intoxicated people.
Exactly. At midnight.
At midnight. The next movie you watched that I also did not watch because I was teaching, The Clove Hitch Killer. This won the Palme d'Or at the Horror Fest, the highest prize a movie can receive. This was one of your favorites, so tell us about The Clove Hitch Killer.
Yeah, I really liked this one. It is about a kid named Tyler. He is a Boy Scout. He is a Christian. He is part of the most like picture-perfect suburb family of all time. His father, played by Dylan McDermott, is the Scoutmaster, an active member in his church, also just picture-perfect suburban American dude. Tyler takes his then-girlfriend out. He steals his father's truck. They are making out, and when she goes down to pull a seat, she brings up a photo, a crumpled photo of a woman that is bound and gagged. And so rumors start spreading. They think it's his. And he goes on to find a shoebox under the floorboards of his father's house that has more of these photos. To put this in context, the town that they're in, I think, has been terrorized for like a decade or so by someone called the Clove Hitch Killer, who ties a clove hitch knot around his victims' houses before he binds, tortures, and kills them. He's basically Dennis Rader, the BTK killer, except played by a wildly charismatic Dylan McDermott, who is basically the daddest dad to ever dad in this movie. He's great. And the movie, despite it being about a serial killer, is I'm pretty sure there's not a drop of blood in the entire movie, and there's extremely little violence to top that off.
Is it still a horror movie though?
It is still a horror movie. It's kind of like this cool cat and mouse game. Okay. The son's suspicions rise and then confronts the dad, and then they deflate again, and it keeps kind of going up and down. And it leads you around to the point where you don't really know what's going on, and then you totally do by the end.
Okay. Seems kind of like The Stepfather with Terry O'Quinn, but without the actual killing sequences.
Is it satisfying by the end?
It is satisfying. It's great. It does this cool trick with time where it shifts to the father's point of view for a while, and then something happens and it goes back and goes back to the son's point of view that shows what was happening simultaneously, and it comes together in a very satisfying conclusion.
I'm really looking forward to this coming to VOD. Sad I missed it.
Yeah.
Our next one, Scary Stories. This is a documentary, one of two documentaries that played at the fest, but the only one we saw. This is about the kids' book series, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, which I have vague nostalgic memories of reading, though I mostly just remember the illustrations. Every time they were talking about the actual stories, it felt like completely new information to me.
I remembered a couple, specifically the one about the viper.
Yeah. Alvin Schwartz is the author, Stephen Gamble is the illustrator, and the movie is a little bit of a jumble, jumping back and forth between looking at mega fans and artists who are inspired by the books, and the son of the author, and academics who study anthropology, talking about the significance of the books, as well as the most interesting aspect to me, a woman from Seattle who attempted, or Seattle or just Washington State, I don't remember. Who attempted to ban the books out of elementary school libraries in the 90s, I believe. And by the end of the movie, two of these disparate threads end up coming together, where the son of the author ends up sitting down with the woman who tried to ban his father's book. And that is a thrilling section of the movie. There's a nice 20-30 minute segment of this where it really settles into the idea of just being a documentary about banned books, and that was just really fascinating to me. They really dig into that issue, and I mean, I have a bias as a teacher, you have bias as a librarian, but the rest of it felt a little bit like it was just a mismatched odds and ends, and
it's trying to do a lot, and I think that's because the author is dead and the artist is an untouchable hermit. Kind of. So they kind of tried to make a feature-length documentary and fill in the blanks, but they try to do like 5 different things, and they just don't have a good yoke on it.
I'll say the stuff with the fans feels completely irrelevant to me. I could lose all of that, and the documentary would work perfectly fine. It really seems like it needs to be a like My Dinner with Andre style sit down between the son, who has a conflicted relationship with his father's work, and this woman who has a really juvenile understanding of what like evil is. There's a great moment where she's just talking about to his son like the reasons why she doesn't want the books out. I don't know, they're just kind of like, they're evil. And it's like, I understand that it's like anthropology, but does it have to be so evil? Like anthropology or like cultural mythology is not always concerned with good and evil. Also, a small thing that has a large impact on the movie is the visuals feel incredibly amateur. Whether it is talking head interviews that are like awkwardly staged, people standing in the middle of staircases and stuff like that, or it's these strange like flash animations that they've made that are meant to be in the style of Stephen Gamble's illustrations, but really don't get there. And it just feels cheap, and there's just like pixels that feel blocky, and it doesn't quite work. Anything else to say about that?
It feels like a rough cut. It needs polish, and I work with nonfiction editing, and like, as far as I can tell, most of the stuff that's wrong with it is very fixable and will cost no money to fix. So I don't really understand.
Smooth that shit out.
Yeah, that's why I say it feels like a rough cut.
Yeah.
It's because it doesn't feel final. Which it might not be, but why
Maybe
would you
it's
put
not.
your rough cut into a film festival?
I saw a movie at TIFF that the director said she was still working on editing.
Oh, okay.
So I understand that, but this was really rough.
Yeah.
Like, it shouldn't even be in this festival.
I mean, we're dunking on it kind of hard, but I still like the movie a lot.
I did too. I thought it was a much more entertaining than some of the movies that I saw. Speaking of, Zombie 2 by Lucio Fulci. This is a movie that we almost did on Cinematary last year during our October series because we wanted to double feature it with Dawn of the Dead. This is an Italian sort of official sequel to Dawn of the Dead. And we
Sort of official thanks to Italy's wild copyright laws.
Like, the person doing the intro explained that there's a law in Italy that says you can make a sequel to any movie ever. It doesn't matter.
Without the rights.
Yes, without the rights to the original movie. So, Dawn of the Dead was published as Zombie in Italy, and so Lucio Fulci's like, I'm going to make Zombie 2. We weren't able to do it for Cinematary last year because it's very hard to find, but we saw a 4K remaster here at the Knox Film Festival. It's boring. Lucio Fulci is known for his wild sequences, things that go really over the top, completely defy logic.
There is an
Extreme
underwater
gore.
zombie and shark fight in this, and it is nonsense, but it is so awesome to watch.
That is the only section to me that felt like compelling nonsense.
Yes, I agree.
The rest of the nonsensical sequences just felt like, okay, how gross can we make these worms on people's faces? How gross can we make this gore through somebody's eye? And those gross out sequences, very few and far between, actually. So if you're watching this for those, it requires a lot of patience.
Is the movie 90 minutes or is it 2 hours?
I think it's longer than 90 minutes.
Okay.
But
it feels like 2 hours.
the sequences the stretches between those sequences are so interminably tedious.
Boring.
It is just people slowly making their way towards the location of the climactic moment, either in boats or in cars or on foot. Nobody gets a character. They're all just bodies that are going to be ripped apart later. And I was bored to tears.
Shout out to the Donkey Kong Country soundtrack. Because that's exactly what it sounds like. Especially when he mentioned the goring the eye scene. It is intense, and then it cuts to this goofy shot of a boat with this little bongo soundtrack.
Yeah.
It is the weirdest cut.
Last thing I'll say about this, and I talk about it more in depth in the writing that'll be up next Monday, but George Romero really established himself as a woke horror director with Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead, dealing with issues like police brutality and commercialism and fascism in America. This movie is racist. This movie really, unlike one of the first zombie movies, I Walked with a Zombie, thinks of Caribbean voodoo or vaudin as this source of primordial evil, not just something that white people don't understand, but something that's actually going to loose evil upon the world. And the movie doesn't really think too deeply about that. Lucio Fulci, coming from an Italian background, probably isn't thinking about the racial dynamics at play in Romero's films as much. But for as little as this movie had on its mind, I wish it wasn't also in the negative in terms of its racial politics. But moving on, Maniac is our next movie. This is one that I saw over the summer for my video essay. There were exactly 10 or 12 seconds of it in my video essay because there's one rare scene of a slasher killing an innocent victim with a gun. That almost never happens. The rest of the movie I could take or leave. It's a bit unpleasant in a bad way. But Jordan, I was surprised that you liked this, especially considering you tend to have a hard and fast rule against slashers. So why did you like this?
I think it was unpleasant in a good way. It kind of threw me off guard in that we spend all of our time with the killer. There is no hero character, really.
Yeah.
The dude is very creepy.
Yeah.
Very effectively creepy. And I have a huge fear of mannequins. This dude has a room full of already weird looking mannequins. It does not help that there are bloody women's scalps on all of them. He also has this mouth on his door that just blows my mind. But yeah, slashers, the reason I'm so against them is I'm never scared by them because I'm also never surprised by them. Mm-hmm. Slashers, you've used this a couple of times while we're talking dead teenager movies.
Yeah.
That's kind of all they ever are. Most of the time is, round up 5 people, put them in a house, kill them one by one. That's it, almost always. That is kind of true for this as well. The movie is basically just a string of kills, and once one dies, they just queue up the next one.
None of the people who get killed get a character really.
Exactly.
Either. Kind of like
there's the one lady that he starts to go out on a date with, but that's the only one.
Does he end up actually killing her though?
I don't remember.
I don't think
he kills her friend.
Dies. Yeah, he kills her friend, and then she's just out of the movie for the rest of it.
That's right. She doesn't die.
Yeah.
So that's weird. So it's like this weird dynamic of the movie's strength also being its con. I ended up liking Maniac. It's in the positive for me, but I don't love it because I also agree with everything that you said.
Yeah, it is. It does have some scary moments. It has an unsettling atmosphere, and the slasher character is really gross, but it kind of depends on whether or not you find that compelling for the full runtime, and I just think it's off-putting in a way that is not worthwhile. But moving on to our last film of Friday night, another slasher, The Ranger, by Jennifer Wexler, one of the 3 movies directed by women, I believe, that played the film festival. This is a movie that was directed, or it was introduced by saying, this is the Lisa Frank-inspired slasher, and I was so down.
What a pitch.
For the Lisa Frank slasher. And it opens with a really promising sequence. It's set in the 80s, I believe, or the 90s.
Something like that, yeah.
And the opening sequence takes place at a punk club. Some kids snort some experimental pink cocaine, and there's some cool cinematographic effects that happen where there's this pink ghosting on everything that you see, and that's where I really felt, this is the Lisa Frank slasher.
The opening title sequence where they credit the title and the first couple actors is also this frantic scratched in font that has all the colors flashing and stuff. So the opening of it very much feels like the Lisa Frank slasher. But then,
and like in Green Room, it becomes a not punks versus Nazis, but punks versus cops situation where the punks need to flee the police, and so they go out in the middle of the woods to a cabin owned by a family member of one of the punks, and then we're just out in the woods for the rest of the movie. This is 90% of the film. The woods is not interestingly photographed, and it really is the worst stereotype of a dead teenager movie once you're out in the woods.
There's no color palette anymore. Yeah. Nothing. The only thing I can think of once they get out into the woods is when one of them spray paints the trees with hot pink spray paint.
Yeah.
But that's it. Then it's just boring earth tones, and like Andrew said, it is not photographed in an interesting way. It's just there.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to have kind of a rote one kid dies, next kid dies, you gotta make it look spectacular. This movie does not do that.
It doesn't.
So after we were out in the woods, it kind of lost me, though it really leans into the idea that a slasher slasher character could have a gun and be menacing. Most of the kills are with guns, which people who watch my video essay know that's an interest of mine, but I wish it was in a better movie.
Yeah,
really wish it was in a better movie.
That's too bad that the Lisa Frank slasher movie let you down, because Lisa Frank's never let anybody down.
The next morning, we got started with a nice, healthy dose of slow cinema. This is a contentious issue between Jordan and I. For the past year, I've been subjecting him to slow cinema against his will. And I'm a big fan of the medium. I don't think it all works. People who've listened to the podcast a long time know that I've kind of been on a journey with slow cinema where I hated it for a long time, and then I was kind of on the fence about, one movie was great, one movie was not, and now I'm kind of in the tank for the form, though I won't go to bat for every single movie. House of Sweat and Tears is a Spanish film by Sonia Escalano. It is about a religious cult. Seems like it's Catholicism at first, but it's a strange fictional brand of Catholicism in which the kinds of rituals and sacrifices that people make pretty painful. The opening shot of the movie tells you a lot about it. It is a close-up on a shoe. A woman breaks a glass on the floor, picks up a piece of that glass, puts it in the sole of the shoe, and slowly puts her foot in the shoe, and then slowly walks to the congregation of people who are sitting and praying. And the sound design really makes every single step feel incredibly painful. And it takes its time. You see a service play out in real time for a long time. And that's kind of the pace the movie takes, kind of slowly showing you these people inflicting harm upon themselves as punishment for their own sins. And it eventually reveals itself to be something that it's not clear about on the front end, which this is a biblical allegory where you have one section of the movie representing the Old Testament, another section of the movie representing the New Testament. I wish it was a little more balanced, where you had 50% old, 50% new. Though
it's like 70-30.
Which is more like how the Bible is actually structured.
Yeah, it's not wrong.
But the Old Testament section does get a little overly tedious, overly painful. You need a high pain tolerance for this movie. But I felt like it had a lot on its mind, and it was the most stylistically confident movie of the fest, as I said in the written piece. Jordan, you picked out a couple specific things that were nice about the look of the film, but you overall didn't really like it.
I didn't really like it at the end. I do like that most of the movie is lit entirely by candlelight. That kind of brings it down to this very intimate level, which I suppose is what they're trying to do with this cult and religion in general. But it just lasts too long. It feels like it lasts forever. There's no genuine arc or urgency to anything until like the 70% mark.
Yeah.
And then everything kind of starts happening.
It does feel like a collection of scenes. They don't necessarily
I agree.
blend together.
There's also there's a couple of scenes that hint towards this subplot of sexual exploitation that they don't really touch on at all.
Yeah, there's a mask involved that gives the film a cool poster. But
yeah,
it's a little underdeveloped, or I don't know if I want to say understated, which is a positive way to say that. But yeah, they definitely don't go down a certain road.
Yeah.
But overall, this was just kind of a tedious.
I did not like it. It doesn't help that the night before I watched 12 straight hours of movie.
Yeah.
And none of which landed with me super hard, and I kind of needed something to wake me up and reinvigorate me. And this long grind. Yeah. The entire movie to me felt like the opening scene with the glass in the shoe.
Yeah. This is a problem of festival watching in general.
Yeah.
Like the time you see the movie in the day and how many movies you watch before it really impacts your enjoyment of that film.
Too bad that Lisa Frank slasher did not reinvigorate me.
Come on. Let's try and work through these next couple quicker because we're at the 27-minute mark here.
Okay.
Next, Lose. I think we can both agree this is our least favorite film of the festival. This is a movie about a quote-unquote possession. A demon has taken the form of this Catholic schoolgirl, I guess, and most of the movie has to do with her being interviewed by, I don't even know, a paranormal investigator, medical professional.
A psychotherapist.
Yeah, the movie is incredibly obtuse. I almost never understood what was going on. It's a puzzle box movie with a lot of stuff out of order. And you're supposed to put it together, but it did not give me anything to go on. Yeah. So I've tried to mull it over since watching it, and I'm just coming up with nothing.
A lot of people that I overheard at the fest are impressed with its dream logic, quote unquote. But Andrew and I talked about how there is no logic to the movie, and dream logic can be done to where there is a trail of story to follow. Case in point, Mulholland Drive.
Yeah.
But Loose just does nothing. It does it stylishly, but it does nothing.
I should also mention, I don't think I mentioned this in the writing piece, this is a 70-minute movie.
Yeah.
And
it feels like it lasts forever.
But I leaned over to you and asked how long we'd been in there, and you said, we've been here for 50 minutes. I'm like, are we in the climax of the movie?
Yeah.
What is happening? What has happened at this point in the movie? It has a great sound design.
Dope soundtrack.
The soundtrack kind of ranges from synth ambient to jazz fusion. The scenes where it's just kind of like holding a static shot and letting the score get really rousing are great. The opening scene is a great example of this. But once it actually starts to have people interacting with each other, you can't follow any of it, and so you lose interest.
Yeah, which is exactly the same case as Beyond the Black Rainbow, which is what I feel like this movie has the most in common with.
I accidentally said you lose interest. Next, Sadistic Intentions, the only movie at the festival that was a world premiere. I kind of walked into this worried that it might not be such a great world premiere, but this was one of the better movies we saw at the festival.
I liked it a lot.
I'm not quite sure how to place it in terms of genre. At the beginning of the movie, it kind of feels like a slasher, specifically Black Christmas. There's a lot of scenes of the killer character talking to characters we're meant to sympathize with over the phone, and we don't see the slasher's face or learn his name. Or we do learn his name, but he's left very mysterious. And we have these two characters converging. They're meant to meet the killer character at his house. And then they show up and he's not there. And they have this awkward, relatable interaction where they have to just waste time together despite the fact they're complete strangers. And then for a little while it turns into a rom-com.
It's like Before Sunrise, man. It's so uncanny.
And I really, really liked the rom-com section of it.
It was very compelling. I liked both of the characters a lot.
Mm-hmm. We have a male metalhead, female hipster. One of them only drinks beer. One of them only smokes weed. And they have nothing in common, but they try to kind of share each other's interests. It's a very lopsided relationship, though. You kind of start to realize over time. And then when it turns into a horror movie at the end, it spends a lot of time kind of punishing the male character, which is admirable, because I think the film's gender politics are in the right place. But the genre-y horror stuff that happens in Act 3 doesn't play in the same way that the rom-com stuff does.
It is definitely not as powerful or compelling, and I wished it lasted a little bit less. But once it goes back down to the two of them in the horror setting, I think it picks back up again.
Yes, because our lead girl, Taylor Saduki, I'm not sure. Taylor Zodka, she won the Best Actress award at the festival. She is a fantastic
It's her feature debut as well.
Yeah.
And she knocks it out of the park.
She communicates the main themes of the movie by rolling her eyes. Yeah. It's a great.
There's this extended monologue that the male character's giving, and her eyes are about to roll into the back of her head for the entire duration, and it's amazing.
So this is a kind of a delightful movie. It's not perfect, but I think that people will enjoy it. It'll probably be on Shudder eventually, so check it out. Sadistic Intentions. Our next movie, our favorite film of the fest. Anna and the Apocalypse. I wrote a lot about this for the website. Jordan, why don't you introduce Anna and the Apocalypse?
Anna and the Apocalypse is a zombie Christmas musical. I hear a lot of comparisons between Shaun of the Dead and this. One of the more particular scenes that convey this is Anna with her headphones in, dancing around doing this High School Musical-esque number while the zombie apocalypse is unfurling in the back. It reminds me a lot of the Shaun of the Dead scene where he's just walking to the convenience store.
Yeah.
And I do not like zombies, and I do not like musicals. Mm-hmm. Somehow this movie charmed the shit out of me. I love it so much. It is definitely the hype piece that I needed. It reinvigorated me.
Yeah.
It was impossible not to smile almost the entire way through, except when it does get surprisingly like deep.
And emotional.
And emotional in some parts. But yeah, I love this movie.
Yeah, it is corny as heck. Not the artsy musical that people were digging on a year or so back with La La Land. This is something that I honestly could see playing on the Disney Channel in a really good way. Like, that sounds terrible.
Disney Channel's version of Adult Swim, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's an R-rated movie.
Yeah.
There's a lot of profanity, a lot of adult content between the teenagers. I mean, not nudity or anything like that. Yeah. But, like, this is not a kid's movie, but it has the energy of a kid's movie.
It does.
And the lightness of touch that maybe it was just when we saw it, after watching like 8 other features that we were kind of lukewarm on, that something this light and bubbly was just exactly what we needed. Mm-hmm. But I enjoyed this so much.
I also think you and I enjoyed this maybe the most in the theater because you and I were cackling and we felt like we were being obnoxious, but it was the best.
So not only are the songs really great, there are a lot of them, which modern musicals sometimes get derided for not having enough music in them because,
drama.
Maybe directors are leaning away from it because they see it as like a low art form or something now.
Just don't make a musical in that case.
Yeah, this one really has clearly demarcated, like, this is the moment where everybody breaks into song and we're not going to care about the reality of the situation. It just happens. And it's so funny. It's so funny in the musical sequences. It's so funny in the dialogue sequences. I was just really enjoyed my experience watching Anna and the Apocalypse. It will go wide probably in December or late November, and I really hope everybody gets to see it. Zach, you may get to see it next weekend at the Savannah Film Fest. Please do that.
It is the Christmas movie of the year as far as I'm concerned.
It will be in my top 10.
Yeah, for sure. I agree.
I think the Christmas movie of the year is a little overstating when the Nutcracker and the Four Realms is coming out later this year, so let's chill out a little bit.
Oh, I should reserve judgment. Sorry. Our final film was The Man Who Killed Hitler and Then Bigfoot, or Then the Bigfoot. Sorry. This is a star vehicle for Sam Elliott, cowboy man from The Big Lebowski, and
mustache of the year every year,
in Tombstone, and all the movies.
Star is Born.
Oh, he's in A Star is Born. I haven't seen A Star is Born yet. Sorry. This is a movie about a man who kills Hitler and then the Bigfoot, but you're seeing him as an old man, and he is reminiscing upon his life. One of the things he did was kill Hitler. Interesting historical revisionism on the period is that in this version of the World War II story, killing Hitler doesn't change anything, and the man feels pretty remorseful that he devoted so much of his life to something that ultimately was pointless. The movie is fairly plaintive in tone, kind of morose. It does not have the over-the-top grindhouse feel that the title suggests.
Yeah, the title and the poster kind of are trying to lure in the Planet Terror crowd, I feel like.
Yeah, the poster looks like Mandy.
Yeah.
But I didn't necessarily need it to be a grindhousey movie. Like, that's not my bag either. But what this movie ended up being was maybe a little too low-key for its own good. And the genre-y elements of it felt very tacked on.
Yeah.
And I felt like you didn't even need them to be what this movie was. But what this movie wasn't that impressive to me either.
Exactly. Also, me and you were talking, and we both have no idea why Bigfoot is in this movie whatsoever.
Yeah, no.
That just out of nowhere, there's this government agent guy that shows up and is like, there's this super plague carried by Bigfoot. We need you to kill him. Smash cut to Sam Elliott shooting Bigfoot in the head.
But then he gets away.
But that, like, the Bigfoot sequence and the Hitler sequence, if you combine the two, it is less than 5 minutes of the movie that the title suggested is based entirely around. Also, again, you said it's plaintive in tone and it feels like a lazy Sunday movie.
Yeah.
The soundtrack and just the weird over sentimentality feels like it's pulling for the Forrest Gump / Big Fish audience.
Yeah.
Which it's just at odds with itself. It's branding wants young grindhouse enthusiasts, but what it actually wants is like speculative reminiscing for the good old days.
Right. So like either route it takes, it has to do a lot of like fan service or whatever you want to call that, pandering, I guess, to those various crowds. But it doesn't pander to either of them particularly well, and it doesn't find a middle ground either. So this movie felt a little pointless to me. It wasn't bad. I was perfectly charmed by Sam Elliott's performance throughout. I enjoy watching him make hot cocoa and talk to owls and stuff like that. But as a drama, and this is like a real low-key drama, doesn't work.
Yeah, also Sam Elliott's top billing, and I feel like we see more of the young version of his character than Sam Elliott.
Because it's a wistfully looking back on life movie, we have to see him as like a 20-year-old for most of the runtime, which is a really good point.
As he also kind of tries to fall in love with this girl that it did nothing. The romance subplot is entirely pointless in my opinion. So the movie is totally at odds with itself at every turn. It is non-functional.
Maybe there's a crowd for this. I'm curious who that crowd is. Maybe when this comes out, somebody can send us an email or a tweet or something. But it was a weird note to go out on, though we missed the final film of the fest. The Survival of the Film Freaks was a documentary about cult movies. That seems like a good capper on the festival. But unfortunately, we had writing to do, so we skedaddled out of there. You can read all of our writing on cinematary.com next Monday. We put a lot of work in this thing. It's like almost 8,000 words. So please go read our coverage of the fest, share it, and give us your thoughts whenever you see these movies. Sorry to go on for such a long time, Zach, but there it is.
Yeah. That's okay. We're going to take a short break, though, and we're going to talk a little bit about 2009's Jennifer's Body after this.
Hey, Cinematariats. This is your co-host Lydia Creech with an important message during this break in the show. Cinematary would like you to know that we do not want your money, and we don't want to place ads in the show at this time either. That's not why we do this. We do it because we enjoy each other's company, and we want to bring you our pure, unadulterated opinions on the world of cinema. However, there are a few things you can do to help out the show that we would greatly appreciate. First, leave us a review on iTunes, 4 or 5 stars only, to help us reach more listeners per the algorithm gods. Secondly, send us a tweet at Cinematary, or better yet, send us an email at zach@cinematary.com. That's Zach, Z-A-C-H, so we can hear from you guys for a change. I'd especially like to hear if you're a human and not an android who also likes Blade Runner, or maybe you have a suggestion of a movie you would really like to hear our opinions on. Regardless, let us know your thoughts and we will read them out and respond to them on future episodes of the show. Finally, please share the show with friends and members of your family who you think would enjoy listening to and participating in our film discussions that we bring to you guys every week. So, to recap, review, send us your thoughts through Twitter and email, and please share with your friends and family. We would greatly appreciate it. Thanks for listening. Now back to the show.
we are back with part 2 of episode 218 of Cinematary. In this part, we will be continuing our Horror by Women series with 2009's Jennifer's Body, which is directed by Karen Kusama from a script by Diablo Cody. It stars Megan Fox, Amanda Seyfried, Johnny Simmons, J.K. Simmons, and Adam Brody. The synopsis is, when a demon takes possession of a high school hottie, Jennifer, she turns a hungry eye on guys who never stood a chance with her before. While evil Jennifer satisfies her appetite for human flesh for the school's male population, her nerdy friend Needy, played by Amanda Seyfried, learns what's happening and vows to put an end to the carnage. Diablo Cody said she wanted the film to speak to female empowerment and explore the complex relationships between best friends. Working with Cody again following their collaborative efforts on the film Juno, Jason Reitman stated he and his producers wanted to make an unusual film. Cody stated that when writing the script, she was simultaneously trying to pay tribute to some of the conventions that we'd already seen in horror, yet at the same time kind of turned them on their ear. One of her influences from the 1980s horror genre was the film The Lost Boys. She wanted to, quote, honor that, and at the same time, she had never really seen this particular subgenre done with girls, and she tried to do a little of both. Despite this, she said she had noticed that, quote, the last survivor standing in the typical horror film is a woman, and that because of this, she feels horror has always had kind of a feminist angle to it in a weird way, and at the same time, it's kind of delightfully exploitative. Kusama said she signed on to the project because of the script. Quote, I was blessed to read this script at a moment where the producers were meeting with directors, and it just knocked me out. It was just so original, so imaginative. That's what it is about the script and the world, is that it feels like a fairy tale gone psycho, and I think that's what most fairy tales actually started as. Megan Fox was in negotiations to star as Jennifer since the film was announced in 2007 and joined the cast in October. She said the reason she agreed to the role was her love of the script. I think what I loved about the movie is it's so unapologetic and how completely inappropriate it is at all times. That was my favorite part about the script and about the character. It's fun to be able to say that shit that she got to say and get away with it, and how people find it charming. Asked how acting in a film like this is different from acting in Transformers, Fox said there's no distractions, like there's no robots to distract you from whatever performance I do give. So if it's terrible...
There's no robots when you're shooting Transformers either.
Well, we're actually robots. And did you not know that? I mean, it's tough to get acting work in the robot world, but that's a whole other episode we can do. Anyway, so if it's terrible, you're gonna fucking know that it's really terrible. She said despite that this aspect of the business being intimidating, she enjoyed portraying the character. I wasn't really sure what I was doing. I was just trying to have fun with it, and I felt like I was able to make fun of my own image as to how some people might perceive Megan Fox to be. I was just sort of flying freely, and I hope some of it works. To prepare for her role as a living dead teenager, Fox dropped to a near frail 97 pounds and stayed out of the sun to keep her skin pale. In balancing out the film's horror with humor, she said she relied heavily on Diablo Cody's script and Karen Kusama's direction to pull it off, stating, quote, I had a very specific sense of humor. Things that I think are funny aren't going to fly with Middle America. It's going to eliminate some of the audience, so you need someone there to tell you can't do that. Amanda Seyfried said it was a relief to play the nerdy character opposite Fox. Quote, being a lead like Megan, you have that weird pressure of feeling like you have to look attractive. In this movie, I didn't worry about any of that shit. I eventually was very depressed that I couldn't get the role, though, because Megan is all hot, but I am not. The nickname Needy was given to Seyfried's character to underline the essentially condescending dynamic in Jennifer and Needy's high school relationship, as Needy often admires Jennifer and feels she needs her. Cody said, quote, Jennifer is a product of a culture that pressures girls to be skinny, beautiful, and just like movie stars, and that she, quote, hopes the film inspires girls to take life into their own hands and do with it what they want. If I had gone to this movie as a teenage girl, I would have come out of it feeling totally inspired, she stated, adding, I would have wanted to write, I would have wanted to create, I would have felt like I watched something that was speaking to me. There were rumors leading up to the film that the filmmakers were looking at actual rock band members Pete Wentz of Fall Out Boy and Joel Madden of Good Charlotte to portray the male lead Nikolai Wolf. The movie... Right? It would have been great. The movie used more practical special effects on the set as opposed to CGI. Kusama said it was a choice that we all sort of made organically. She said they appreciate those kinds of effects in older movies and question sometimes how much more effective it is to use a ton of CG, and that they always started with a practical effect and then move forward from there to lay a groundwork of something that's actually physically materially there. The Chicago Tribune on the movie said the tone wavers, the direction slackly indecisive, and visually drab, and in the middle of it is a thinly conceived antagonist played by Megan Fox. Honestly, she's a pretty bad actress. She doesn't seem to get Cody's sense of humor at all. The New York Times said Jennifer's Body takes up a common theme of slasher films, that queasy, panicky fascination with female sexuality that we all know, and it turns it inside out. Roger Ebert said there is within Diablo Cody the soul of an artist, and her screenplay brings to this material a certain edge, a kind of gleeful relish that's uncompromising. This isn't your assembly line teen horror thriller. The portraits of Jennifer and Needy are a little too knowing. The dialogue is a little too off-center. The developments are a little too quirky. After you've seen enough teen thrillers, you begin to appreciate these distinctions. Let's put it this way: I'd rather see Jennifer's Body again than watch Twilight. So let's talk a little bit about Jennifer's Body. Paige and Jessy, I'm curious, have you guys seen this movie before watching it for this?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, in high school around when it came out.
Yeah.
How did you respond to it in high school compared to now?
I was one of those edgelords who decided to hate Megan Fox just because she was Megan Fox and she was the hottie of the time.
Yeah,
it was cool to dislike people that were mainstream hot. And so I came in with like a superior attitude, into watching it, and I don't think I even paid attention to it. I was just like, ugh, that was stupid. I didn't even pay attention. I didn't like it. Which is very different from how I feel now.
Yeah. I think, pretty much the same thing. I'm going to echo Paige. I don't remember having strong feelings about it, and when Andrew rewatched it maybe about a year ago or less.
That was me watching it for the first time.
Yeah, when he watched it, and he was like, well, this is great, and I was like, no, that movie is dumb. I watched it when I was in high school and was an idiot. It's... Yeah, I think also like Paige said, I was kind of like, she's lame. Megan Fox. Megan Fox is lame, and this movie is silly. But honestly, it had all the makings of something I should have liked as a teenager, because I really liked that kind of music. And
I didn't deserve Jennifer's Body.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we'll dive into today.
I needed growth before I came across this movie again.
Exactly.
It is a movie that kind of shamelessly lampoons high school culture and like the dumb problematicness of teenagers.
Yeah.
I almost feel like Megan Fox herself maybe didn't quite get it based on her quote that Zach gave in the info sheet. Like, she enjoyed getting able to say all the like awful shit that her character says.
Yeah.
Like, as somebody who teaches teenagers all day, God, I can't count on my hands the amount of awful shit that comes out of their mouths.
Oh my God.
And we watched this last night together, and there were a lot of lines where people were like groaning, like, "Oh, it's 2018. How can they still be saying this?" Or look how problematic the 2000s were. But no, nothing has changed. Like, this is how teenagers talk, and I think that it captures it really well.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also interesting that this comes out in 2009, so this is 2 years after the first Transformers movie, and you also have the second one that came out the same year, and so I feel like that kind of to the point that Paige, you and Jessy made, that's probably what colored the perception of this movie. I think I saw a movie, article that I think it was Vice had written earlier this week, actually, about Jennifer's Body, saying that it would have killed in the box office if it came out today. Like, it would have been a big hit. And I think that's true, because coming out in 2009, 2 years after Transformers, and with Megan Fox kind of encapsulating that persona rather than, I mean, she didn't really have any other agency to any other persona than what she was given as a character, or I'm putting air quotes around character in Transformers. that's, it's not really her fault. And so I think like planting her in this movie is really intelligent. It's such a smart move by Diablo Cody and Karen Kusama, because she really does, pun intended, eat up the role really well. I think that she's able to deliver these lines with I can see why Michael Phillips with the Chicago Tribune would say she's a bad actress, because she does have this kind of deadpan lifeless delivery to the lines, but I think that's kind of that's the reason. Like that's the character. That's the purpose. And I think that's probably a lot of the reason why this movie was so just readily discounted, and Diablo Cody was kind of written off a little bit for a while, because it came out just hot off the heels of Transformers. It kind of felt like a cash-in movie using Megan Fox, and I think that a lot of the subversiveness was just not as apparent in 2009 compared to now.
Like, you mean subversiveness of the dialogue in the movie?
Yeah, like I think what's so effective about the movie is that it has this very subversive dialogue. I think that it's kind of one of those, it's being opaquely like heinous and rude and homophobic, and that's what it's getting at. That's kind of the point of it. It's leaning into that, and I think that's. It's kind of, I almost think it was kind of lost in 2009, because I don't know. I don't think that it played as, quote, as like humor in 2009. It played as, I think people just took it on face value.
I guess I'll say both that if the movie was a little bit smarter with the dialogue, and again, in 2009, we kind of took that for granted. Now, hearing a word like the R word, we're kind of like, really? We couldn't just think of something better to say? I will say, on the one hand, I think I would have given it a higher rating, personally, if it had a smarter dialogue in terms of, using words like the R word or like homophobic slurs. But on the flip side, and as Andrew touched on, working with teenagers, I work in a middle school, that's the reality. And I tell them to just use more thoughtful language, but that's how they talk. So it's frustrating to hear that, especially from main characters constantly throughout the movie, but at the same time, that is a reality that still exists today. So I think that it's genuine to teenage culture. Maybe not all of the time. There are some phrases sprinkled throughout the movie that are like, does anybody really say that?
Nobody really. I mean, it's a Diablo Cody script. She's sort of capturing the idiom of teenagers, but she's doing it in this heightened, campy way.
Yeah.
That Jordan, you were surprised that it was said written by Diablo Cody when the credits rolled, but I kind of feel like you can't not feel that it's a Diablo Cody script. It's like, what is the, you're so jello. Like, people don't say jello, they say jelly. And she's just always leaning into these just a little bit too corny.
Yeah.
Too clever.
I don't want to seem like a problem by saying that's kind of what's great about it, but maybe that is. I don't know.
I mean, it shares that in common with Heather's, where I am even though I didn't live during that, or I wasn't aware of the social norms in the era, I'm pretty sure they didn't say the shit like they do, but that's what made the script iconic, were all those ridiculous lines that they spewed constantly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to me, it is endearing, but at the same time, I'm definitely cringing.
Yeah. If it were made now, maybe it would have been more informed. Take something like, what was the movie with the girl who sent out all the letters by accident to the guy? To all the boys I've loved before. So if it was something like that, made just now, they know what to say and what not to say, even if it's not necessarily always realistic to teen culture. To make a movie that's not problematic. And
I mean, I think that all the boys are looking for is like safer and more tactful.
Well,
but like,
again,
is it going to have the iconic status?
It's not a fair comparison, sure, but like those are both movies that attempt to capture a teenage culture, and like I think if Jennifer's Bodies was made today, it would have been smarter or more. Less problematic with the things that it says, the dialogue, the words that they use, but it is still pertinent, relevant, salient today with teenage dialogue. So, in
addition to teen speak and high school culture, I think that there's a really potent sense of like late 2000s, like the transitional period between the mall goth emo phase of music in America and the like indie pop phase of music in America. The movie really hinges upon this song played by the band Low Shoulder. That man, I wish that guy was played by Pete Wentz, because that would be just so perfect. They are, a relatively inoffensive, kind of safe poppy rock band, but all the guys in the band are a little skeezy, and there's a genre-y reason for that. They're gonna go do some sort of demonic ritual sacrifice, but we now know with hindsight, or I guess guys now know with hindsight, that there was some like predatory shit going on in that music scene in the day. Like the big headline is like Jessy Lacey from Brand New is like a sexual predator back in the day. And just like if you go back and re-examine like a lot of the lyrics of that era, it is a lot of troubling dynamics between men and women, and this movie really captures that, like when the iron was still hot, kind of noticing things that the mainstream culture wasn't noticing about how predatory that whole scene is. I enjoy that, and I just enjoy it as like a cultural artifact of seeing music like that in a movie that is kind of considered low art, and we're not going to see it in like the new Barry Jenkins flick or something like that.
I definitely remember it being marketed as, look at all the bands we were able to get in this movie. Panic at the Disco, Fall Out Boy, etc.
Yeah, it's all the Fueled by Ramen record.
Yeah.
It was like, we got good tunes and lesbians.
Yeah, Megan Fox, you want to see this flick. And I did see that flick.
I feel like we're
it worked.
A little bit shortchanging Amanda Seyfried in this movie. We've talked for 18 minutes without mentioning her, really. She is the best part of the film for me.
She's perfect.
What did you guys think of her character?
I love her. I was reading like about her character, and like she does fill that role of like the standard nerdy girl, but she is also sexually active, which is not something that you usually see in the nerdy girl character. And I know you've been wanting to talk about her wholesome relationship with her boyfriend, which is probably the cutest sex scene I've ever seen.
Oh my gosh!
Even though it is,
it's cute, but also like you're kind of covering your face while you're watching it because you're like smiling, but also awkwardly, and you're like, nobody can see how
he went to the super Target to buy the condoms.
She watched him put it on. She's like, "Oh, look at it, it's cute."
Oh my god,
it's too cute.
What is the something swirl? It's like meant to be make it better for the girl.
For her.
And I love that sequence, especially because of the way that it's intercut with the sequence of Megan Fox kind of destroying the hardcore goth kid.
I guess that's like displaying like sexuality in two very different ways. Like the evil sex and the pure sex.
Predatory teen sexuality and like sexuality where the teens know each other well and they're comfortable with each other's boundaries and they're like checking in to make sure everything is good, and like it's just very dorky but very cute and pure, and I love it.
I don't know if I can think of another movie where I was like, that was the purest sex scene I've ever seen.
That's it. There it is.
Adorable. I wish that she could have had a nice ending for herself instead of like realize that her goth friend was being sliced up.
I also don't like the frame story in this movie. There's a couple things that are serious detriments to my enjoyment of Jennifer's Body, and one of them is certainly the Amanda Seyfried in a mental institution voiceover narration that Jordan just mouthed to me, Great Gatsby. It is like tacking on the weird Nick Carraway in a mental institution in the Baz Luhrmann Great Gatsby. Just doesn't need to be there. You can start this movie with them at school. You can finish this movie with her killing Megan Fox and let that be the end of it. I don't really understand what the purpose of that would have even been, and it certainly doesn't land for me.
Yeah, I usually hate when stories are framed like that. Like Atomic Blonde made me mad. They did it like that, and in your favorite sci-fi movie of the year, the Annihilation is framed like that, and that's the only bad part of that movie to me is the way it's framed. It just makes you like not afraid for the protagonist because you know they're gonna live because they're telling their story shittily.
That's true. I don't necessarily know if it doesn't make me afraid for her. It definitely is more of a how is she going to be changed by this narrative than is she going to survive, which in a horror movie is like whatever. But it just felt a little. Over the top seems like a bad descriptor because, again, Diablo Cody's script and a lot of this is purposely over the top.
Yeah.
But it just didn't work in a way that I can't quite describe. And the fact that there's so much voiceover in that sequence harms it for me.
Yeah, I agree.
I guess it was nice to see a very different side of Amanda Seyfried.
It's Seyfried.
Seyfried. And then see her like nice and nerdy and sweet, and then like but she murdered her best friend. Spoiler. And then now she's in a mental institution.
We talk about spoilers on this show, Jesse. It's okay.
Okay, well, just in case they forgot.
Zach, I feel like we haven't heard a whole lot from you. What did you think of Jennifer's Body?
I liked Jennifer's Body. I think that a lot of the stuff we were talking about earlier related to the content and what the dialogue between the teenagers, I feel like kind of plays into a quote that Karen Kusama said about how this is a fairy tale gone psycho. I think that a lot of that, like there's just a real lack of reality in this movie. So that's what kind of allows it to work. It like you said, it's this. Diablo Cody writes it in this very heightened space. Everything, the homophobic and racist and whatever remarks are so unoriginal and bland, and that's kind of is almost what makes it comical because they're delivered with they deliberately had no like real creative thought put into them. They're just these very lame duck insults that they throw out, and not even directed towards somebody who is specifically that way, just in general in a very minuscule way. It is this kind of strange kind of commentary on 2000s, late 2000s culture in general. I wish Nathan was here because I want to go into a discussion about how this movie's like about talking about 9/11.
Yeah, Nathan's review is didn't expect this to be about 9/11. I think I can be the Nathan proxy today and try and explain how this movie is about 9/11. I think there are a couple direct references to 9/11. Like, for example, she goes and buys the 9/11 shooters at the bar. The two cups of liquor that are meant to look like the Twin Towers, and they're in red, white, and blue.
And then you drink them and they turn brown.
Yeah. The Chris Pratt character, who apparently Megan Fox has a sexual relationship with, was in Operation something Freedom, but it's not Operation Iraqi Freedom, I forget. Most of the movie centers around like a microcosm of the aftermath of 9/11. It is a small town tragedy, right? A small roadhouse explodes. Everybody in it dies, essentially, except for Amanda Seyfried and Megan Fox. Everybody in there is well known amongst the community, and therefore the entire community is essentially in mourning. And the movie deals with the way in which that a small town deals with this kind of public tragedy, where some people are really broken up. Other teenagers maybe don't have any connection whatsoever to the people who died, and so they're like Megan Fox, just like inappropriately joking around. And there becomes this awkward sense of like, at what point do we stop mourning? At what point is it just like pressing the issue too much to keep talking about it? How long do we have to act sad if we're not sad anymore? And what sorts of things do we congregate around in order to seek comfort or kind of gesture towards the sadness that we feel? And essentially, in this movie, it becomes this bland, like soft rock emo song, Through the Trees by Low Shoulder, which becomes the town's unofficial anthem, in J.K. Simmons' words. And it really reminds me of like the way in which music was policed in the post 9/11 era. Like, you couldn't play Rage Against the Machine on the radio anymore after 9/11. There's like this long list of things that just got blacklisted because we got to make sure it's like good vibes only. And the stuff that became a phenomenon was like the Proud to Be an American track, right? Or I feel like I remember hearing that song played on repeat, like the year that 9/11 happened. So the film is like working in this weird temporal space of public group mourning, while individuals are trying to work out their own shit, and I don't necessarily know in what way the movie comes to a head and what point it's making about that, but it definitely is like, as a cultural artifact, again, capturing that awkward sense of time.
I don't think it ever does come to a point. It's super strange. Like, I was really vibing and digging the whole, like, whoa, this is like about 9/11. It's like hitting some marks, and then it just drops it, and I was like, oh. And then it goes back to like the she's an undead thing, and I was like, oh, that's too bad. I was really vibing with the 9/11 side plot of this whole thing.
Did you get anything on that front other than what I talked about?
Yeah, I loved especially how the Low Shoulder, the band, uses this tragedy to kind of spurn their popularity and rise to stardom. There is like this kind of sick connection that you can make between like tragedies and how public figures from these tragedies kind of become public figures. Like, I think
they use it as a ladder to climb.
Yeah, and it's in a way, I think that the J.K. Simmons character especially, which, by the way, J.K. Simmons was making some choices here. I don't know what they were, but I liked them. But it's funny that there's like this force field, around this band because of what this song has meant to this town and these people who are so involved with this tragedy that you can't criticize or look at them in a critical light. And I think that kind of comes into play in a lot of real tragedies where you have these kind of public figures who are a little off base or using that platform to vault themselves. And I felt like it really hit the point with that. Like I said, the 9/11 stuff was great. That was good stuff.
I feel like I would be remiss if we didn't spend a little bit of time talking about the romance ? Between Amanda Seyfried and Megan Fox. Paige, I know you have thoughts about this.
Oh, yes, I do. So my big thing was that I know this was written by women for women, but I was like, okay, what about that kiss? Did you like stick to your guns? Was that for women too? And as it turns out, the answer is yes. That kiss was a comment on like friendship and how in like adolescent friendship, like between girls, that becomes like obsession sometimes. Like you want to sleep in bed with them. You want to know all their secrets, and if they don't tell you those secrets, you feel like outraged. Like they're not supposed to keep anything from you. It's just like they're supposed to share everything with you, and it becomes like romantic, like at times, or what appears to be romantic. So, well, hang on. Kusama was just like writing that because she had friendships that were intense like that, where she wanted to wear their clothes and just be like them and be with them constantly. And so she wanted to really like show that intensity. And she's like, and I hate to admit it, but it is sexy. And she's right. It is. But I think it's awesome because I think like in movies about female friendship, it's like sisterhood of the traveling pants, or we just hold hands and we're whatever, who cares. They don't like to mention that like intimacy part, and Jennifer's Body does, especially whenever the dynamic is so shifted. Like one is clearly like the loser friend, I guess.
Yeah.
Even though I would never call Amanda Seyfried a loser. I love her. She's an angel. But then also, like, it's not just friendship. There's, like, a needy definitely
even
has
from the beginning
feelings.
of the movie, when there's, like, the little scene of Megan Fox's character as a cheerleader, and Needy's like giving her the eyeballs from the stands, and her friends are like, "Wow, lesbian over here."
I know but I think that's just great. I just love that she like really plays into that. Like, I admire my friend so much. I love her. I can't think of another movie that does that. That doesn't eventually spin into actual lesbians.
Let me add some quotes from Amanda Seyfried and Megan Fox about their kiss. Get your thoughts on this. So Megan Fox said that while filming her kissing scene with Seyfried, that Seyfried was, quote, extremely uncomfortable. But she herself was not. Megan Fox said, "I feel much safer with girls, so I felt more comfortable kissing Seyfried than kissing any other people that I had to kiss. Seyfried's uneasiness in the scene caused giggling fits between takes. Seyfried said that neither of them wanted to do the kiss because they felt it was just for promotional purposes. Sure, she agreed with Fox that she was uneasy about acting out the scene, saying, "It was my first time doing a real kissing scene with a woman. It is just weird. It is a woman with a woman's soft and florally, and maybe the pheromones are different. Something about it felt uncomfortable to me."
Yeah, so it's funny that you say that. I was reading that, and I was watching her interviews, like when she was when that had just come out, and she was just like, Amanda Seyfried was just this baby 23-year-old who is very much, I am a straight woman and kissing other women is professional only. And now she was like, man, I watched that sex scene, it was sexy, it was great, it shot so good.
It is a beautifully shot
It
kiss.
is.
I mean,
It's gorgeous.
extreme close-up on the lips, and it is held a really long time, like an unprecedented amount of time.
I saw another interview with Amanda, and she was just like, yeah, it worked because we have very similar kissing styles. We're just good at kissing each other. And I was like, can you be any more straight about this gay scene? Meanwhile, Megan Fox was just like, hell yeah, I love kissing women. But yeah, I don't know, that seems pretty standard. I think she's just trying, like, she doesn't want people to be too fixated on it, like, doesn't want people to question Seyfried's, like, heterosexuality. So she has to make comments like that. Yeah, but I don't know. But I do agree that they, like, I see why they were worried that that kiss was just for promotion, because really, like it was written for women, like in the script, but they did promote the shit out of it for men, for sure. That's why I was saying, like, I think it was written for women, made by women, for women, but promoted for men.
All the posters are only images that are not actually in the film, and like really put Megan Fox in seductive poses that you don't necessarily see her in. I mean, she is a very sexual character, but as I was talking to you guys about off mic, like her sexuality is always portrayed as predatory in a way that is kind of like reminds me a little bit, not in the same tone, but like under the skin, where the only time you actually see her in states of undress is when she's about to kill somebody, and you're meant to be afraid of her because of the score and the way it's shot and all that stuff. Whereas, like you said, the marketing is very much like, hey, come see Megan Fox get naked.
Exactly.
Before we wrap up, any final thoughts on Jennifer's Body?
What did you guys just think about it as a movie? Is this a movie you enjoy and would recommend to people?
Yeah, well, like I was kind of saying at the beginning, when I watched it back when it came out, I thought it was pretty silly, and it is silly. It don't get anybody wrong. It's a silly movie, but I think it's a lot of fun too. It plays on some, I don't know, pretty classic horror tropes, but it's a lot of fun. And it's something that it's like surprising what a mainstream hit it was, given that it's a fairly well played out, bisexual.
Oh, yes. I don't want to interrupt you.
No, yeah, go for it.
So at 4:30 a.m., I woke up like in a sweat. I was like, I have something to say for Cinematary. And I wrote, this is the only thing I fucking wrote down for this podcast to say. And I said, if there was a dragon who hoarded only items that radiated bisexual energy, this movie would be in his cave. So
there are so many reviews on Letterboxd of like, this movie made me buy.
Yeah.
Exactly. This movie has so much buy.
What were we saying when we watched it last night? Like,
Megan Fox has to ingest the big dick energy.
Well, yeah, there's definitely that. But Jordan did not know that it was a bi movie going in, and me and Paige were like, what? And then I was like, well, it's because you weren't a horny girl thirsting for horny girls, so that's probably why you didn't know it was a bi movie going in. And that's the story of that.
2010, Paige would never admit this, but she watched it because she knew two girls would kiss in it.
It's a good wholesome kiss scene. It's good.
Wholesome?
Wholesome until
there's
death.
a lot of wholesome stuff
Wholesome
in this movie, for sure.
It's good. It's really good.
Yeah, I like this a lot too. I don't think it's perfect. Like it does have some structural issues, like the framing, and maybe not all of the humor works. I definitely think that the scares, the combination of computer generated effects and practical effects maybe isn't quite as effective as it needs to be. But as a relationship drama / comedy between Amanda Seyfried and Megan Fox, I'm really invested in that. I think that they both act their asses off in this movie, and I think the script is just like really crackling and great in a way that only a Diablo Cody script is. So I enjoy the kind of like low stakes campy fun of this film a whole heck of a lot, and I just think it's pretty delightful. So if you have not seen it, I definitely recommend it.
And if you saw it when you were a teenager and thought, I'm too cool for this, just watch it again. Maybe you're not too cool for it this time around.
Yeah, don't be too cool. Just
don't be too cool. Just go in. Know it's kind of dumb. Enjoy those Panic at the Disco tunes at all, and just enjoy how good it is. It's really good.
Is it good, Jessy?
No. Yeah.
Zach, any last thoughts from you?
No, it's a good movie. I echo what you guys said. Check it out.
In conclusion, it's good.
Yeah, it has that good movie stuff,
Movie good.
Movie good. We on podcast. If you want to learn more about this podcast, you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com.
Rockwood, Tennessee. We should not be disparaging towards people with southern accents.
We're all in Tennessee.
I know I did it first. I'm sorry.
So if you want to learn more about this podcast, you can go to facebook.com/cinematary, or you can go to Twitter handle at Cinematary, or you can go to Letterboxd at letterboxd.com, where we post about all the episodes in all the movies. I'm so sorry, I'm a ditz. All these movies that we talked about in this episode. Next week, as part of our Horror by Women series, we're going to be talking about 2016's Raw. This movie will wrap up the series. It came out a couple years ago. It's another movie about girls eating each other. You know, what are you going to do? Make sure to check out cinematary.com. We got a lot of reviews on our Re-Fear series. We got Psycho, the remake of in 1998. We got 1995's Candyman 2, Farewell to the Flesh, as well as Jaws 2 from 1978. I can't say it's a French name. I just can't pronounce it. I'm sorry. But yeah, thank you guys for listening, and we will see you next week.